Hey everyone, it's Jerry here from the Rebuildables. Before we start this episode with the New York Knicks, I wanted to give a couple of announcements and updates. My first announcement, and one I'm beyond excited to make, is to say thank you. We've reached 250 episode downloads on the Rebuildables, which is something I never thought would happen, and thank you. I cannot stress this enough to everyone who's tuned in for a second, minute, all the episodes, one of them. It's an absolute honor to be telling you guys this, and I hope to break more barriers in the future with more numbers. And with that being said, just thank you for listening. This next episode with the New York Knicks, I bring out my friends Evans and Davion via Zoom call to talk about the New York Knicks. With that being said, some of the audio might have been a little lagged out and cut just because of the internet and lagging and different issues and stuff like that. So I just want to apologize for anything that sounds a little funky or weird. I tried my best to edit these things out and make it sound as smooth as possible. But with this being the new normal, some of these things I can't control. But I want to say again, thank you to everyone who tunes in and keeps tuning in. Without further ado, let's get into the New York Knicks. Welcome back to the Rebuildables podcast and show, hosted live from now Brookfield, Illinois. This week, I'm going to be talking about the New York Knicks, but I am not alone. Here with me, as part of the starting lineup on 2K, I'm glad to introduce Evans and Davion. Guys, welcome to Rebuildables remote version.
What's up, Jerry? Thanks for having me.
I love the fact that you guys are on here. From all our talks in the PlayStation parties, this is like the first chance we get to sit down and do it for real. We get to do about probably the most dysfunctional organization in the NBA, or top 5 at the least. But before we get too deep into the New York Knicks, let's talk a little bit about what's going on in the real world, like everything else outside of Corona, even though Corona has a major part in everything. The first major thing I have on the sheet here is that the Bulls have hired Artunis Karnovicic, something like that. I cannot say his name yet.
Chavez. I don't know.
Something like that, as the executive vice president, and they have fired Gar Paxson and John Foreman. So this is a rejoice as Chicago Bulls fans. This is huge. What did you guys think about this? As we finally got rid of Gar Pax.
Best thing that happened in the past 10 years, honestly.
Man,
he's just so dysfunctional, man. I don't even want to talk about it.
Yeah, because I think with Garpax, he had 22 years in the organization. It's just once Jordan made his way to Washington, everything kind of had an up and down kind of slope. It was kind of weird, but I'm glad that he's kind of relieved of his position. And
in 22 seasons as Gar Foreman as the general manager. Since it wasn't Ryan Starr. Who was there before him? It was a guy who drafted Jordan. I forget off the top of my head. This is Bulls history that I don't have off the top of my head anymore. Who used to have that Bulls organization. That he was a replacement for that. A lot of weird turns since then, with Derrick Rose and stuff. I went over this a while ago, in February. So just to think that now there is some change coming. Are there any GM candidates that you guys have off the top of your head? I know that's a weirder question. I know they've been trying to get the scout from the Nuggets. I forget his name off the top of my head.
I haven't thought about what GM. Just somebody better than Gar Foreman. Anybody is better than Gar Foreman.
Yeah, and GM, I'm not really sure, but man, it's so much to deal with when you got to think about John Paxson is also in this deal too, Yeah. So it's half the problem is going.
Well, Paxson, wasn't he the executive VP that now Arturis has taken over for? So both of them are basically relieved. If I'm correct.
Okay.
So this is a new era. It's going to be real interesting to see because the Bulls do have a really good young core. Everyone likes Kobe White. Zach LaVine can play. Lauri Markkanen if he's not hurt. Same thing with Wendell Carter. And Otto Porter's just there. He's injured over most of the season, so yeah, they were talking about firing him, but nothing has been released yet. But I know that he was going to talk to him about. They're going to have a meeting about his future. In other news, something I saw that was interesting in the world of sports was a pitcher, Trevor Bauer. He broke down his spring break performance, or like spring training performance, against one of the league's best players in Mookie Betts. This is really like cool. He sat down like an iPad for 20 minutes, drew out like the strike zone, drew out his pitch, and everything he was thinking about. I know we're not as big of baseball fans as basketball fans, but like this was something like if you guys, anybody has 20 minutes to listen or just watch, because everyone's like has free time now. This was really interesting. I'll put that link in the bottom of the podcast afterwards if anyone wants to watch that. And my final note before we get into the Knicks is with COVID-19 and coronavirus, can we keep doing what we can to flatten the curve? I want to have a good summer. Everyone wants to get out of their house.
Yes, sir.
None of us on this podcast right now are health experts in any way, shape, or form. But even with that, anything that the CDC, the WHO, or anybody that has more medical degrees than you know of, let's please take this seriously. We're not doing a horrible job. We're not doing great. So with that being said, that's my PSA to the world of let's keep doing what we have to do, especially in America, so that we can have fun this summer and not be stuck in our rooms. When we come back for the second part of the podcast, this is where it gets real good. We're going to talk about the New York Knicks, a team in the biggest market in the United States. But last time they were in the playoffs was in 2012. What happened? How do you have the star like Carmelo Anthony? What happened to him? Where do we go from there? And what does this team look like now with coronavirus and COVID-19 ravaging the NBA season and putting it in a spot that no one really knows where it's going to be next? Thank you, everyone, for tuning in to the Rebuildables Podcast Show. My name is Gerald Hopkins, and I'm not alone with Evans and Davion. When we come back, we will talk more about how the New York Knicks came from one of probably the biggest organization in basketball to a laughingstock. Welcome back to the Rebuildables Podcast and Show, hosted live from now Brookfield, Illinois. I'm still here with Evans and Davion, and now we're getting into the meat and potatoes. This is the part that I've been waiting to do for about like 2 months, and I'm happy I'm not doing it alone. Together, we're going to dive in as a GM trio of how did the Knicks get from 2012. In 2012, the Knicks were a playoff team. And they were a good playoff team. And now, they're at the bottom of the division, if not really close to it. Just to give some context, in 2012, the Knicks were, let me look back here, 54-28, and they lost in the Eastern Conference semis with Mike Woodson as their coach. This team features a lot of talent with Carmelo in his prime. He's averaging 28 points, almost 29, and he has a good supporting cast around him in J.R. Smith, Amari Stoudemire, Iman Shumpert, and even Raymond Felton. This is when Raymond Felton's not bad, or doesn't add the 20 pounds for some reason. And this is a fun team. Carmelo and JR are just a really fun duo that was the first the Nuggets, and then they come to the Knicks, both in their prime, and just have fun. What do you guys remember from this 2012-2013 team?
I remember all the crazy alley-oop dunks JR was doing.
Oh my God.
With Pablo Prigioni, he had one where he went under the baseline under the basket, caught it, and did a double clutch. And then
he throw a chest pass? It was a chest pass that he alley-ooped it?
Yeah, the chest pass that he caught and just alley-ooped it. And then he had one when he was playing against LeBron in the Heat, where he had he did a reverse 360 or something. He was crazy. That was a fun team to watch.
David, what do you remember from that team?
It was a solid group. They took down a lot of teams that were contenders that year. They took down OKC. They took down a lot of teams. Miami. They took down Miami. I was just shocked by that. I was okay, they might mean business. And then they eventually went on to win Atlantic Division Championship. That was kind of crazy to me. But,
yeah, this was a good team. And this is what I say. This is Carmelo in his prime. Mid-range fadeaways, 2 dribble pull-ups, step in one time for a 2, not a 3, like prime Melo, where he just couldn't be stopped. In the playoffs, this is go ahead, Wamo.
Isn't that the year he scored 62 against Charlotte?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think this is the year.
Dude.
In this, and to kind of look back at this, in the playoffs, this team also beats like the Celtics, but this is without Ray Allen Celtics. But this team still includes Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, and Rondo, and they beat them in 6 games. So that is a very formative opponent, but they were missing Ray Allen, and as we've learned, the rifts that Ray Allen has had with that team is really interesting, and that's a whole different story. But that's still a good team to beat. But then they go into the next round and they lose to the Pacers in 6, and this sets up for one of probably the best Eastern Conference series of the decade, which is the Pacers Heat series. But looking back at it, like the Knicks were the higher seed. They were the 2nd seed and the Pacers were the 3rd. But that team with Paul George, Lance Stevenson, David West, and George Hill were all good at keeping the Knicks from scoring. Like they're a very good defensive team. The Knicks only had 1 game where they went over 100 points. Yeah. That was game 2, which they won. And the team only averaged 100 points per game, like during the season. So, and they let up like 95 on average. So when the Pacers got those stops to keep them under 100, it really helped. And that was when Paul George and Lance were just on it. Like this is what everyone's like, Paul George, rising star. I remember those.
Great defensive team. Like I love watching them.
Yeah, that was a crazy team.
I remember from like how they played the Pacers in the playoffs, and then they beat Pacers one game by like I don't know, it was like 1-something to 79, and then like the other games they weren't losing that much by it. Like when they lost to the Pacers, they wouldn't lose by no more than 10 points at a time. So
yeah, it wasn't like the Pacers were blowing them out. They were just defending them so well. And that was one of the staples of that Pacers team was the fact that like they weren't gonna like try to outscore you. They're not gonna Houston Rockets you and try to put up 130. They'd put up 95, but they'd stop you at 70 or 80 or 85. And this was an interesting year because everything looked up for the Knicks. And you're like, yes, Carmelo's in it. You have JR catching everything in between. And so when we get into next year, the 2013-2014 season, this team goes downhill a bit. And they go and they're not even above 500. They're 37-45, which takes the team out of playoff contention. Mike Woodson, who was the coach last year with the 54-28 team, is still coaching. But now Phil Jackson and Steve Mills are the executives running the team. One article that I was reading while I was looking through this was by a Ringer article by Roger Sherman called A Horrifying Timeline of Everything Phil Jackson Did in the 39 Months with the Knicks. And it's just insane to see like how not just Phil Jackson, I'm not going to blame this on Phil Jackson, but this whole core like falls down with a lot of the small moves he makes. This team is still good and stable. And they still had most of their pieces like Carmelo, JR, and Amon Shumpert were there. And they also pick up Tim Hardaway in the draft, who I think is still really underrated. But this season, Tyson Chandler only plays like 55 games. Amari Stoudemire plays 65. Andre Bargnani only plays 42. And they were missing their big men that season. This is kind of a weird year, though, because you knew the Knicks could do it, but they were just missing talent. Like, and this is going to be a weird – this is like that – this is where – and you guys can argue this if you want. This is where the Knicks go into basketball purgatory for like 3 years, where they're not bad enough to like tank, but they're not good enough to get to the playoffs, or if they make the playoffs, they're in the 8th seed.
No, I definitely agree because their bigs were like injury prone that whole year, and Carmelo was the only one on that team really doing anything. If you don't have like an inside presence, then it's not gonna be good for your team. So I definitely agree with that.
Yeah, it was just tough especially because like this is Carmelo's still putting up numbers. Like they have so much talent at guard, but the one thing I also noticed is they did not have like a great like Raymond Felton's not a bad point guard, but they didn't have like another piece to elevate them. Like that really hurt.
They did have Jeremy Lin, but Jeremy Lin, I think he moved away. He went to Houston after that season.
Yeah. They didn't want to give him the money. That was one of those big moves. Remember, it was like it's like $1 or $2 million. I think that they weren't like he was trying to get his bag, and they were like, "No, can't do that. Cannot do that."
Houston, man.
That was it. And then from that team, this just goes everywhere down south because they fire Mike Woodson and Derek Fisher comes in as the head coach. And Carmelo has been hurting with his knee. This is where things really start to go downhill. I cannot stress that enough because Carmelo's hurting. This is the year he's out for half the season because he has constant knee injuries.
Mm-hmm.
And he only plays about 40 games. The Knicks finished 17-65. But they still have the core. They still have Melo, but he's hurt. J.R. Smith's there. Amon Shumpert's there. And Amari Stoudemire. But between that Melo injury and constant nagging injury, which was probably the worst part about it, was it wasn't like he was hurt and they stopped him. He was like, I'm sore. And then he'd take 5 games off or 2 games off, then come back. And until they couldn't find a consistent winning, they couldn't consistently win, they didn't try to tank until it was necessary, which is going to be something I think that is one of those small mishaps that we look back at it now and it's wow. Then when I tell you things go downhill, I mean it. Because this is the year they also trade J.R. Smith and Amon Shumpert to the Cavs. And this is where they trade J.R. and Amon. And they get Lou Umstead, Alex Kirk, Lance Thomas, and a 2019 second-round pick to the Cavs. And OKC is in this trade too. They give a pick to the Cavs, and they give up Deion Waiters. So this is the formation of the LeBron team in Cleveland too.
Oh yeah.
And then you have Cleveland and not Cleveland, LeBron and JR and the good and the bad. Because everyone only remembers the bad, which is also really sad. But you see this build, and then that year they also waive Amari Stoudemire on February 16th because of his injury prone, how injury prone he was.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really sad, to see Amari go that way too, because he was so talented, but he just always was hurt.
Yeah, it was really unfortunate to see that because even in his days with Phoenix, he was so explosive and he could get the job done, but he was just always injured when he came to the Knicks.
Yeah, it was and he was really good. I remember those Steve Nash, Amari Stoudemire teams with Sean Marion shooting his chest pass jump shot, and it would work.
Right.
7-second offense.
7-second offense. And then this is where the Knicks are going to first try to make their rebuild case. And I think this is really interesting because they tank this year and they're clearing cap space. One of the reasons they traded away JR and Amon and they get rid of Amari is to get this cap space. Because in the 2015-2016 offseason, I'm going to list to you guys some of the top free agents, okay? You have Dwayne Wade, Kevin Love, Jimmy Butler, Kawhi Leonard, LaMarcus Aldridge, and LeBron.
Oh, wow.
Mm.
And this is also the year they take Porzingis in the offseason for the 3rd pick. Do you guys remember any one of the signings that this team makes during this free agency period? This is when LeBron is yeah, I may leave Cleveland.
I know they didn't get any stars.
Yeah, they just filled in. Probably the bench, probably some string guards, string forwards, but I can't really, off the top of my head, I can't think of nobody really notable.
Here are the guys they brought in that year: Kyle O'Quinn, Robin Lopez, Aaron Aflalo, Derek Williams, and they traded away Tim Hardaway Jr. for Jeremiah Grant.
Oh my God.
Right? Oh my God. This is the first time you see with the Knicks something that's going to be a trend for them forever. It seems until something changes, is that the Knicks never want to actually rebuild. They never want to sit for 3 or 4 years with a subpar team and tank, or not even just tank, but not be good and just develop players, because they could have kept these key pieces around them, but they were going for the big hit. They're going for LeBron. They're going for Dwayne Wade. They're going for Kevin Love. And this is where it all goes downhill. That season, after having Kyle O'Quinn, now the biggest signing was Aaron Aflalo, which is also wow. Because we don't, as a younger generation now, we haven't seen the Knicks sign big players since Carmelo.
Yeah.
Which is absolutely crazy, because you think of the older Knicks, you think of Patrick Ewing, John Starks, Walt Frazier, even Charles Oakley, who's not the greatest player ever, But like
Right.
they're big names. They're names that are now like remembered in history. And now since like 2010, their biggest signing was Carmelo, and that's it.
And then you got guys like Jennifer Dad, and you got Nas was a rookie,
Yeah.
but just picking up certain pieces and then like having guys like Aaron Afalo and Kristaps just scoring the ball more consistently, and then you got Melo still leading the way, even though he's coming off of injuries.
Yeah, and this is after that offseason with that trio of Carmelo, Porzingis, and Aaron Aflalo, the Knicks go 32-50, and they fire Derek Fisher in the middle of the season. Now this is already like the second head coach that we're now getting rid of. Woodson's gone, now Derek Fisher's gone. And this is another like stinging point, which I'm gonna bring up later when we talk about today. Like when we get to what do the Knicks do now, is they've gone through so many coaches, and like no one ever gets to sit down and just lose. If they lose too much, they're gone. If they're mediocre, they're gone.
Right.
And I think it's one of the biggest problems that the Knicks have had is that you never have like anything consistent. Every 2 years, there's like a new idea or some big thing that they think is going to happen that never does. Like, and we're going to get to it. After this season, in 2016 and 2017, Aaron Aflalo, who's the third best player and scorer on the team, is gone. He leaves and joins the Sacramento Kings, just like that. And then this team looks like an older version of the Bulls. And this is a memory that's going to sting with us. This is the year that the Bulls traded away Derrick Rose to the Knicks for Jose Calderon, Jerian Grant, and Robin Lopez for Derrick Rose and Justin Holiday. And they also signed Joakim Noah. So this is where the Knicks started to look like the Bulls, but just washed out because of Tom Thibodeau.
I could really say like I put a lot of hope into this team because of Derrick Rose and Joakim Noah. Just seeing those two gel together on the Bulls are like kind of had an effect on me. And I was just like, okay, so it's the New York Bulls now. I could just go over here and just like put my hope in these guys along with Melo and just have them deliver. But
yeah, and there was some real talent there. The thing is that they did not pan out well because this season they finished 31-51. But with the new coach, they have Jeff Hornacek. You got that going for you. A third coach now that we're talking about. This span like 4 years. And this team has that talent that you were talking about, Davion. Like they have Derrick Rose, but he's not the same. This is him coming off those 2 injuries. And this is that first year after. Like now Derrick Rose is like starting to be effective again, which is we've all been waiting for. But right after, this is the year he takes that random leave of absence with the Knicks too, because like in the middle of the season he just missed like 3 games and no one knew where he was.
I think that was like, was it around April? I believe he had.
Yeah, they were not winning.
Yeah,
they were not winning at all.
Meniscus. And then like the game before he like stopped playing, I think he had 27 that game. He's just real. I don't know. It was down the stretch where he would show flashes, and then it would like be like consistent up and down numbers from Derrick Rose.
Yeah, and that's been one of the things that made him move along teams. I think too was just like everyone knew he had talent still, but he wasn't consistent until about now. But the core of Carmelo and Porzingis looked really good. That was the first year they really got to like gel. They were the two. You know, no Aaron Aflalo averaging like 13 points on the side. It was those two, but there just wasn't enough around them. Like Joakim Noah can't score. He shoots sideways.
Right.
Like Derrick Rose was hurt half the year and stuff like that. But the thing was they were too good. This is that purgatory that they were too good in the lottery. They didn't lose a lot. They won 31 games. It wasn't above 500, but that's now 7th, 8th. Now you're like 9th, 10th pick away. You're not 1, 2, 3. You're not in those odds. So it's the word I'm looking for. And then this is the last year of Phil Jackson, when those 39-month article I was talking about, this is where it ends. Because he is fired on June 28th, 2017. Again, more movement above the players. So now Phil Jackson's gone. You've gone through 3 different coaches. And then in 2017 and 2018, this is where things just go downhill. Because this is the last year of Melo. Melo is traded on September 25th to the Oklahoma City Thunder. This is when they get Enes Kanter and Doug McDermott in a second-round pick for Melo. I remember that this is the idea behind the trade was like, we're not going to win. We know we're not going to win. We're giving Carmelo a chance to win somewhere else. And this like actually signals a rebuild. everyone was like really weirded about this trade at first, but now when we look back at it in hindsight, it kind of makes sense. Like, yeah, you don't want to see Carmelo.
But afterwards, like in the present day, it kind of doesn't make sense at all. It kind of just was like, why make that trade?
Well, they weren't trying to win, so at least they gave Carmelo a chance to win. Like, they realized it.
Like, it's like they wanted like to tank and get picks, which they I forgot who they picked after that year, but then the signing of like Julius Randle and Wayne Ellington and all that made them think that made us think like they want to win, kind of, or they want to like put Julius Randle as, make him like a star.
Yeah, no, you're about a year ahead. We're gonna get to that too.
Yeah,
you're about a year ahead with Julius Randle, but no, at first this looks like an idea of a tank. Then this is because they're like gonna build around Porzingis. You're like, okay, we get it. They're gonna build around him. They're gonna tank for once, but then Porzingis gets hurt. As on February 6, 2018, where he goes down with that torn ACL. Well, this helps with the tank idea because now your best player's not even playing. It hurt him a lot because it took him a whole year plus to come back to the NBA. But it wasn't even with the Knicks, which is like, we're going to get right into that. But with that start of the rebuild going on, the Knicks finished 29-53, and they fired their coach. Jeff Hornacek's gone, and now David Fitzdale's the head coach. Again, something we don't get. It's a fourth move of a coach already. I think it's the fourth move, now, right?
Yeah.
Of different coaches that they've gone through. And it's not – and maybe one season's validated in maybe moving somebody, but this wasn't. I still don't know why they made this move. Not that Fitzdale's a bad coach. It's just that Jeff Hornacek was not given anything at all.
Yeah.
And then they got rid of him. And now you're going to get into that draft pick we were talking about, Evans. In this 2018-2019 season, the Knicks get the 9th pick. And this is where they take Kevin Knox, where probably everyone thought he had a lot of potential, and it just hasn't panned out. I'm going to name for you guys some of the players that were taken after him. Some were recruiting Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, Michael Porter, and Devontae Graham. This is also the Trae Young and Luka draft, with DeAndre Ayton going 1 and Bagley going to the Kings, which makes the Kings look like idiots. And you have Wendell Carter in this draft. There's one or two other people. This was a very solid draft that we look back at it now. This is a little bit where the Knicks get unlucky because they finished 29-53. They're somewhere near the bottom, but they get the 9th pick. And they're right outside of a lot of other players that they could have grabbed if they get the 5th or 6th pick. But this is a miss. Kevin Knox was a miss in the draft.
Yeah, off the names alone, I could say from the roster. Well, let's start from the rookies. Okay, from the rookies for me, they had Mitchell Robinson, where he showed flashes of how well he could be a big man. They had Billy Garrett, a Morgan Park alumni, who played for DePaul. They had Alonzo Trier, who they actually started paying, I believe, around late first to second season, where he began to perform really well for the Knicks. And then they had Kevin Knox. Yeah, Kevin Knox.
Wasn't Alonzo Trier Michigan State, or is he North Carolina? I remember Alonzo Trier. Yeah, where he went for college.
Oh, Arizona.
Oh, I remember him. I remember the name. I remember when he started playing for the Knicks. Everyone told me he was a bucket. He's like Antonio Blakely is now, or Blakeney. He can get buckets, and on teams that don't do well, he gets his buckets, but we'd never get to see them on an actual good team. Which is
he's a really solid ISO player for his first, second year in the league. It's just some of those things where he comes off really good with the ball in his hands, and then he just has the floor spaced out.
Yeah, almost he was not. I want to say Jeremy Lin of the Knicks at that time, but he had that in him. Not to compare him to Jeremy Lin, but when Jeremy Lin was going off,
it was parallel. It was definitely parallel.
But no, and one point you made that I love is talking about Mitchell Robinson. That was their second round pick, which they hit on. This is probably their best pick they've made throughout this whole time that we've talked about, because he was their second round pick, and now he's almost a rising star, if not a rising star. He'll probably be a guaranteed top 10 big man in 3 years if they ever get pieces around him. But this is also a year I'm going to list to you guys the 3 free agents that they could have picked up, and they didn't get any of them. Chris Paul is on the move again. This is the year he goes to the Rockets. LeBron, this is the year he goes to the Lakers. And this is when Paul George re-signs with OKC again, saying we're gonna run it back, and then he runs it back for one more year and leaves. All 3 of these guys were like targets, and the thing is that the Knicks thought they could get one of them. They got none of them again. And during the season, the Knicks traded. This is where we were talking about Porzingis earlier, and this is where it just all falls apart for a lot of people. This is where the Knicks trade Trey Burke, Tim Hardaway Jr., Courtney Lee, and Kristaps Porzingis to Dallas for DeAndre Jordan, Wesley Matthews, and Dennis Smith Jr., and a 2021 first-round pick and a 2023 first-round pick. And Porzingis hadn't even come back yet. Remember, like, he was still hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Like, he hasn't come back until this season. And just like they traded away their future. Because that was the guy that everyone thought they were building around. Right? Like, I at least remember that, like, everyone's like, when Porzingis comes back, we're going to put him around Knox. And now we have Mitchell Robinson, so Mitchell can get some more rebounds. Like, there was some, like, real potential here. And they traded away Porzingis. When I was looking through this again, there were rumors that he pushed the trade. I remember seeing some of that. And then one that never really panned out but was really interesting was, remember right after Porzingis got traded, there was rumors of that he had sexual misconduct with one of the Knicks employees. I remember that. Yeah. That's because everyone was trying to figure out why they traded him. I don't know if anything came from those, but I remember, like, nobody understood the Porzingis trade. Do you guys remember anything about it other than just not understanding it?
Well, I would always see rumors of him wanting to leave, and then, like, it was a whole lot of stuff revolving around him in the off season, or just with him not being active on the court. I think it was something else about him, like, in his hometown having brawls and fights, but it was just a lot. I believe that he really pushed that trade off the top of my head, but to be sure, I've seen a lot of rumors that he was just uncertain with the path that the future of the Knicks were really going in.
Evans, what do you remember from that Porzingis trade?
I just remember, like, it caught me off guard a little bit because I know it was rumors about Porzingis having a feud with the Knicks, and I was like, okay, I don't think it's that serious. You know, they'll get over it. They like Porzingis and everything. I thought they were gonna keep him and try to build around him, but then they traded him, and I was just like kind of confused because like they don't have a piece to like build around anymore. Yeah. So it was just a waste of a trade. It didn't really make any sense to trade your star player.
Yeah, and the thing about it was Porzingis was like the perfect story. He gets booed on draft night, and every Knicks fan doesn't understand why they made this pick, and they think they flopped on it. And he comes out to be a star, and he's the star in the biggest market. He was great with the most part for the media. I remember, like, yeah, there was those rumors, but whenever he went in front of a camera or a microphone, he never said anything like negative, and like he was always really positive to those people. So to see him like leave was really, really interesting. And like you said, even they traded away their best piece, like, and no one kind of understood why. And because of all of this turmoil and failure to do anything productive, the Knicks go 17-65. But again, they're actually tanking. Then we get into last season, not the season that has been halted, the season before that. There were rumors that the Knicks were going to get KD and Kyrie, and they missed that. No, this is actually, I'm talking about this year. Why am I?
Yeah.
I'm like tired for no reason.
This is past somewhere. It's okay.
But remember, the Knicks were going to get KD and Kyrie. They missed on both of that. They went right across the street to Brooklyn. They were also hoping to get the first pick. Didn't get that. And they get RJ Barrett with the third pick. And now they signed, like he was talking about earlier, Julius Randle and Bobby Portis, which were some of the bigger signings. I think they signed Taj Gibson too. And then in the middle of this season, they fired Coach Fitzdale. He's gone. And now they have the interim coach, Mike Miller. So all of that just kind of happened out of nowhere. And then before the league closed due to Corona, Spike Lee stopped going to the games. And that was another feud because with the ticketing issue in Madison Square. And also in the middle of the season, Steve Mills, who is the replacement for Phil Jackson's fired. And they hired Leon Rose and Scott Perry. So already, even before the league stoppage, there is so much turmoil around the Knicks. And before we get into like actually rebuilding this team, which we're going to do in the next section, what have you taken away so far from this Knicks team?
This Knicks team is very confused on what to do because obviously they try to cater to like players and fans, but they do it in like a very like bad way. They're not taking care of their coaches. They obviously don't believe in any of their coaches, and I feel like they're messing up team chemistry all the time, like trying to get people that don't even know their roles, and they're just like really dysfunctional.
Yeah. From that Knicks team this year, that's from the season that's been halted, it was a lot of controversy surrounding around how they treated people such as Spike Lee for him entering the media entrance instead of just going through the regular general, I believe, entrance, which resulted in him stop going to the Knicks games. Ultimately, they finished 12 in the East, and they got rid of a piece that was vital to that team that year, which was Marcus Morris. I believe he went to the Clippers.
Yep.
Yeah, they bought him out.
Yeah, and then we have like, I don't know. It seems like it's a rebuild on top of a rebuild in a way. Because we got a lot of players. We got a lot of young tenured players. Like, we only have like, from that team, probably 2 players that were 10 years into the league. Everybody else is like rookies and probably under 10 years.
Yeah, and the thing about the Knicks is that the Knicks have always, and this is where I finally am going to bring him up. James Dolan he must not like an idea of a rebuild. And one of the things that I think has always haunted the Knicks is that the fact they're in New York. Like, and you're expected to win in New York because it's the biggest market. You have the money. Look at like the Yankees. You would never let the Yankees tank. The Yankees would never go for 4 years and be like, we're going to stink. Because they're the Yankees. They have the most money. They have all this history behind them. And the Knicks have just never sat down and gone, we're going to stick with one guy for 4 years. We're going to lose. You're going to have to live with it. Like, they never did what Philadelphia got around to doing, which is like when they were losing, they're like, we're going to lose. And the fans are like, yeah, we're losing. And they were okay with it.
Right.
But I don't even know if I want to say it's the Knicks fans. I don't even think the fans have a problem with them tanking. It's the guy ahead of him in Mr. Dolan, who's always been like, we need to be competitive. We need to be good. And it's led to mediocrity. You've missed on, and also that, because there's been so much movement, no one wants to go there. You don't want to go to a place that mistreated Carmelo and put him in a weird spot because they always told Carmelo they were going to get a free agent. And we talked about the free agents that were in that class. Didn't get any of them. Twice. Right. You traded away your biggest star. And you never hear anything good out of, like, the Knicks organization. Like, whenever you hear them in the news, you're like, oh, no. What happened next?
Yeah, it's like a whole lot of bad luck following that team. Like, they always passing on something that's right there in front of them, and they just miss the grasp. Or just for James Dolan, wanting to have so much success in the Garden itself, but not accepting the build-up to have that success in the Garden.
Would you call it bad luck, though? Is it bad luck, or is it the unwillingness to just build, or the unwillingness to wait?
I can't retract that statement on bad luck, but I want to say that, I don't know, taking shots in places where it's not going to fully land, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, no.
It's like they talk a big talk, but don't show anything for it.
Exactly.
I can't agree more. And we're going to get way more into this in the last section of the podcast. But before we go off to break, is there anything else that you remember about this season before we get into like the future of the Knicks that really brings to your mind?
That really comes to my mind. I just remember they didn't let Spike Lee inside the Garden. They just
which is crazy.
He's so terrible, bro. And
everything. I don't know.
And the worst thing I think about that is the Knicks, like, people aren't going to remember RJ Barrett struggling even, which is what you usually remember from a season. And, like, I'll talk about RJ Barrett more, and I'll make my case on him because I'm a Duke guy, so I have to love him. But, like, even with it, like, the biggest thing right now from this Knicks season is that their biggest fan, if not one of the biggest fans, does not want to go to games anymore. And it's not even because of the team's performance. It's because of the way he was treated.
Yeah.
And that just enamors me in so many ways. So, if you guys don't have any other comments, we're going to go to break.
I think with Spike Lee, this is my last time. Spike Lee, it kind of revolved, like the way that their season went, even though they did fairly, 4 spots below the playoff entry before the season got halted, it seemed like a Spike Lee film the way that the Knicks played out that season, because they had a lot of trouble going in with the locker room and just like the players. Like, it was a lot of stuff going around RJ Barrett and his early struggles, and then Dennis Smith was always just in and out of the lineup. But that's pretty much it for me.
Yeah, so now we're going to go to break unless I cut somebody off again. When we come back, we're going to talk about what do we do from now and where does the team go? And with all the uncertainty around it, we can only make our best predictions because we don't know if the season's coming back, if it's going to be playoffs only. So the guesses and the takes we make here are obviously going to be a little different maybe a month from now, which I think is really interesting. But at the same token, we're going to dive into what should the Knicks do next and what do the Knicks need to do to really become successful. I want to thank everyone for tuning in, still listening to the podcast at home. I hope it's something that everyone can kind of appreciate. It's 40 minutes of non-corona talk, it feels like, which is kind of nice. So with that being said, we'll be right back. Welcome back to the final part of the Rebuildables podcast show, recorded now for Brookfield for the time being. I'm still here with Evans and Davion. They've been awesome assistant GMs, and now we're getting into the fun stuff. This is where we make the takes. This is where we talk about a team and their future. As what do we do with the Knicks? I have 4 steps, and I'm going to go through them. We're going to talk through them, and then we're going to go into a little bit of the NBA draft. We don't, again, know where the Knicks are picking or when the draft will happen. A lot of things are still in the balance, but these are changes that can be made with or without the draft, and then the draft picks will be, again, a little different, a little off, and this is also very early speculation, but that's what we like here. So my first step, and this one's not going to be, I think, surprising, is James Dolan needs to either be fired or held accountable because he's the president of the organization. He's head honcho. So whatever he says goes. And what thing is about the Knicks is they are like the most successful money-wise basketball team in the NBA and in the America. So what hurts is the fact that like they're not winning and they're still worth so much money. And you're not going to get rid of something that's worth, according to Forbes, up to $4 billion. But if they want to actually win, if we were just sitting here from a hypothetical, if I want to win in 5 years or less, you're going to have to get more accountability at the head. And one of the things that's been really plagues the Knicks is that they have such a negative reputation around like anybody. Like we were talking about it, like they have had incidents with Charles Oakley, Spike Lee, fans who have said to fire James Dolan have been kicked out. And people just don't have, like, you can never criticize him. He's stopped a lot of media outlets from interviewing him or letting anyone in the Knicks organization talk to some media or, media outlets. So there's always been like this lack of trust with anybody who discredits the Knicks. And it's made it really like a toxic environment because at the top of the top, you can't bother the guy who's made a lot of these decisions. In 18 seasons, the Knicks have had 13 coaches. You can't build when you have every other guy leave. Or not even leave, get fired. Not a lot of guys leave the Knicks, coach-wise, but they get fired. So that's my first step. And I think anyone have anything to add on that first step?
I feel like that's a good first step. I feel like James Dolan. He probably needs to be fired because so much has gone on. He's the main reason for a lot of these like situations going bad. So I feel like he needs to get kicked out or get fired because he's not gonna make it any better.
He just sucks at hiring.
Yeah.
Like he hires Phil Jackson, then Phil Jackson does a horrible job. He hires Steve Mills. Steve Mills does a bad job. So you can't just blame like the coaches or the GMs. If the GMs and the coaches are always just in a cycle of the guy at the head of it, like the top of this, doesn't do anything. The most important thing James Dolan has done is sat at courtside to watch the losing. Like, you know how crazy it is? Like, he sits courtside to see 17 and 65 teams. Like, but that, and it's just, even if they don't fire him, someone needs to be on his right hand and be able to hold him accountable to something because he isn't. If he fires anybody, who does he have to answer to? Exactly. Like, no one is, because he's the head of it all, whenever he makes a mistake, he doesn't have to say, I'm sorry, I made a mistake. And because his team's still worth so much money, and New York Knicks fans are unforgivingly loyal. Like, I give so many props to Knicks fans because there are still a healthy amount of Knicks fans, and they don't bandwagon. They still hate the Brooklyn Nets. Like, Brooklyn brought in 2 great stars, and people still hate the Brooklyn Nets in New York. That means something. You have fans that will die for that team, it feels like. And they can't, because they don't hold, they hold James Dolan accountable, but no one else can. And because he still makes so much money, he just doesn't move. He's not going to move. I think that has to be step one. That if they don't fire him, they have to hold him. There has to be somebody who can tell him he's wrong, or he has to say, I'm wrong too. My second step is if we get rid of, we get a new owner, and go like that. If we're looking at a coach, I don't want to get rid of the GMs yet because we have like Leon Rose. Let's give them some time, let's let them build a little bit. But their first move, outside of anything, should be hiring Kenny Atkinson. Kenny Atkinson is a former Brooklyn coach. Worked with D'Angelo Russell, Spencer Dinwiddie, Jared Allen, DeMar Carroll, and made a team that was basically in rebuild. I think they were the 7th or 8th seed last year.
6th seed.
And they gave the Sixers a really good matchup. D'Angelo Russell turned into an all-star player, which he had the potential to be, but the Lakers weren't able to harvest it. Dinwiddie can be a starter for half the NBA teams, if not more. And like the fact that he is that good of a player and the 6th man, and Caris LeVert. I didn't even mention Caris LeVert yet. They had a young core there, and Kenny Atkinson sat down with them, had 4 or 5 years to build up guys like Caris and Spencer Dinwiddie, wasn't always under the pressure of we need to win right away. And he developed these players, and he's really good at that. And if you can't hire Kenny Atkinson, at least hire somebody for more than 2 seasons. Anybody else have any head coaching ideas off the top of their head? Kenny's my go-to.
I agree with Kenny because, like, for Kenny, he should be, like, the one coach that everybody should go at, considering that he was in a mix of coaching 2 superstars at this pinnacle point of the year. And then with that and how he develops players, like, okay, let's say the Lakers moved D'Angelo Russell because they felt like he didn't have the leadership, right? They sent him to Brooklyn. You had Spencer Dinwiddie, who was getting waived from the Bulls, and the Bulls wasn't, making the playoffs that year, I believe. I think they probably were, like HC. But this is when Fred Hoiberg was there. But just to have those players and to develop them like Kenny Atkinson did was something that was really special for a coach to do in such, short time. So for him to be around the Knicks for some coming years, if he gets hired for that position, would be really helpful for the organization and the team alone.
Yeah. It just the thing with is if they hire someone like Kenny or a coach that's well established, you can go through a list of them. They have to let them sit. I don't think any of the Knicks head coaches, for the most part, that we talked about earlier, outside maybe Derek Fisher. Derek Fisher wasn't that good. But David Fitzdale's not a bad coach. Jeff Hornacek's not a bad coach. They've had success other places. So if they're going to give someone like Kenny Atkinson a shot, they have to give him a shot. They can't stop halfway through. I think that's going to be the biggest thing. And that comes with my step 3 is that there has to be some type of change of culture, which is something Leon Rose talked about. And then 3 days later, Spike Lee got kicked out. But there has to be a change. There has to be not just a change at the top, but there's such a negative perception around the Knicks now. Like, they're a laughing stock. The Knicks are a joke. And whatever the Knicks do is not good. Again, when I said earlier, whenever you hear about the Knicks in the news, you go, what happened next? Or what happened now? Not, oh, let's see what the Knicks did. Like, and the Bulls were the same way for a while. Kind of like, okay, who do the Bulls do now? What do the Bulls do now? But now we're like, hey, the Bulls are hiring this guy. The Bulls are hiring that guy. Just like that, how quickly a change of culture and the perception around a team will have a chance because you still are in the biggest market. New York has history, which some of these rebuilding franchises I've talked about in the past don't have as being like new teams or teams that have just traditionally been horrible. The Knicks have success. They've had, and they are literally the team of New York still, even with the lackluster amount of talent. So not only just holding Joel accountable, but the young core of that team, that the RJ Barrett, the Kevin Knox, whoever they draft next, they need to be able to trust the people around them, as in the head coach, the GM, and understand that, like, hey, I might struggle. I might not be perfect, but I know that my coach is going to hold me accountable, but he's not going to grill me. Or if I play bad for one season, I'm going to get moved. Especially when you have young players. Especially these guys are coming out at 19, 20 years old. You know, this is the first time they move away outside of college, if they even go to college now, or they go off the country. So if there's always been this perception with the Knicks is that they're going to make a move. They're going to go for a big free agent. They don't need that because no one wants to play for the Knicks. So that's my big third step, is there needs to be some type of culture change. It needs to be, because they're trying to rebuild. You don't just keep drafting players to draft players. No one wants to be a veteran of the lottery. So what are some other steps you guys think that like would precipitate a culture change within the Knicks, realistically?
Culture change. They can ask like what the players want out of the team, because ultimately the players are playing for your organization. If they're like comfortable in an environment, you like talk to them and you can make the environment comfortable for them, then obviously they're gonna want to play. They're gonna be like, oh, they cater to the players, so like we can bring in people. I could come and recruit people. They say so what they're gonna do, they do it, and just things like that. Just catering more to players, so like more people will want to be like involved in that organization.
Yeah.
And then for me, for a culture change within the Knicks, just kind of like differentiating the team from system play. Okay, because we know we have a lot of young players. So getting them to fit in the system, like some players come from colleges where they played in systems to win championships, potentially. So if we kind of change up and let certain players be having the offense ran through them instead of just like, I don't know, okay, having a subset here for a play if it doesn't work out, or a subset here for a play, it could be a big difference. The way that the Warriors were, how Mark Jackson built them up, and how they became a dynasty of the league within the next 4 or 5 years.
Yeah, no. And that system has have to come through a coach, because that's where it all ends up to. And they have to let a coach sit there and lose and take the heat. And that's where some of that culture comes from. There's just the idea that the Knicks move too fast. And my fourth step, and it kind of brings this, is that they have to keep these pieces around. You have to keep Kevin Knox. You have to keep RJ Barrett, Mitchell Robinson, and don't let talent go on the table or go away for big fishes, for those free agents, because we've had so much failure at getting these free agents. They've failed on LeBron twice, and outside of Carmelo, their biggest signing was like Aaron Aflalo. And this is New York. It's not a small market. This is not Milwaukee before Giannis. This is not even Cleveland. Cleveland's defined by LeBron, but Cleveland's biggest star outside LeBron could be considered like Mark Price. In the sense that like you are the biggest market in the whole country, and you keep missing on these fishes, and you keep missing on these big players. So you kind of have to stop. If you change the culture, but you let these like players grow, then these stars will come back. They're not afraid of New York. They're afraid of the Knicks. They're afraid of the organization. No, like some of those best players, if that wasn't true, KD and Kyrie wouldn't have gone to Brooklyn. They're still in New York. but they didn't want to play for the Knicks. It's not that they didn't want to play in New York. And the thing is that they still have that fan base. People will vouch for the Knicks. Like, I know everyone booed Porzingis on draft night, but they vouched for him every day once he started to perform. And I know it's a little, like, flimsy, but at the same time, when he was hurt, they were vouching for him. It's like when Porzingis comes back. Knicks fans are loyal. And there needs to be – you need to let these guys grow. Let Barrett struggle a little bit. I loved RJ Barrett. I loved him since he was a Duke player and when he was in Canada. Let him grow. Yeah, he struggled a bit, but he's shown his flashes. If you let him sit with somebody and and he has the trust in the organization that he can make mistakes while growing, he'll turn out great. Mitchell Robinson, who's a gem, will continue to be a gem if he can trust the people around him. Kevin Knox might turn into a good player. I know he's struggled way more than maybe the other two, but they have to stop worrying about those big fishes. So my final question, who do the Knicks draft? Again, when I make this disclaimer for all of us, this is a way too early draft move. And since the NBA is in a stoppage and because of everything that's going around, we don't know when the draft will happen, how the draft will be affected, we'll know how it'll be ran. We ran through the lottery, but the lottery will be determined on the standings right now. Will the regular season finish? So a lot of the speculation and stuff we talk about now is very early, just to keep that in mind. I feel that the Knicks need a point guard. And this is where we could definitely disagree, I think, is that unless you really trust Frank Ntilikina, Elfrid Payton, or Dennis Smith Jr., bring in somebody who's going to be able to move the ball around and be a floor general. You have some scoring already. I really like, and I'm going to go high, either Killian Hayes or LaMelo Ball. Yes, I'm talking about a ball brother. Killian Hayes is a kid from France who can play. He can pass, and the thing is, he's a great passer as well as a great scorer. He can be a star. I've seen comparisons to like D'Angelo Russell and stuff. And if you add a D'Lo to the Knicks, that's a great ad, right? He's a guy who can pass the ball real well, but can also score whenever he needs to. If Killian Hayes is 3/4 of D'Angelo Russell, that's more than enough. But you want to have somebody who can sit there as a point guard and can get their buckets, but also isn't afraid to pass. I think guys like Damian Lillard or Steph Curry could do the same thing. They're not afraid to score, but they can also distribute. And if you can get somebody, even if it's not Steph Curry, D'Angelo Russell, or someone of that high of a caliber from this draft, I'd love to take Killian Hayes. Because he can do, if he's 3/4 of those players, those superstars, he's going to fit perfectly for the Knicks. And then my backup pick is if you trust Dennis Smith Jr., I would look at Devin Vassell from Florida State. He's Robert Covington, Matisse Thybulle type player. I love 3-and-D players. You guys know this. But I could add Klay Thompson to every roster, I would do it. I love those types of guys who can just shoot and play a good amount of defense. And he's that. And he hustles. And I think he was like the second option at Florida State, which is not bad. Florida State's a good team. And you don't always need to have, with a guy like RJ Barrett, who's a ball-dominant scorer, having someone who can lock up the best player on the roster and can also hit a corner three when Barrett's cutting through the lane, that can be really good. So those are my two picks. But I would really, if they could get Killian Hayes, who's arguably the best prospect in the draft, of course. But if not, looking at like Devin Vassell or even like LaMelo Ball, who do you guys like early? This is early.
Go ahead, Davion.
For me, I broke mine down into like first and second round. So we're looking at guys that's potentially going first round. So I feel like they need a point guard too. I agree with you on that wholeheartedly. And my guy that I would have to draft, he's not so high, but he's still in the lottery. If drafted, Tyrese Halliburton from Iowa State. So if you think about it like this, they do need a guard. They need somebody bigger than the average size that they've been having. So you're thinking around guys that's like 6'1", 6'2". Tyrese Halliburton, 6'5", wingspan 7 feet, can handle the ball real well, and is shooting pretty good from the field at Iowa State, averaging 15 points. He gets 7 assists, roughly. He's around 7 rebounds. And that's just one point guard I would like to have just for the first round. And then my first round pick, probably for the wing or the front court, Obi Toppin, somebody like a Kenyon Martin type of player. Relating to how he did pretty good at Dayton averaging 20 points and then having 7 boards before going into the tournament and then everything being halted. That would be a good pickup probably for the front court for the Knicks. And then for another first round, probably the final first round pick is to aim for a center. I say James Wiseman if they can get that lucky. Potentially he was drafted number 1. He was supposed to be drafted number 1, excuse me. And then, things happened with him in Memphis and a controversy where he had to leave. And for my second round picks, I have Austin Wiley. I don't have much background on him, but I figured he'd be solid for a big man to have. And the other second round pick from Duke, point guard Trey Jones, brother of Tyus Jones, could be helpful. Could be a defensive leader on the floor if he becomes more of a defensive-minded player when he gets to the Knicks. But he had to help with the scoring load when he was at Duke. So those are my picks potentially.
Evans, what are you thinking?
I agree with the Obi Toppin pick. I feel like he could bring in like inside scoring and all that, and he could just develop under like Julius Randle, play alongside Mitchell Robinson. I feel like that'll be like a good. I feel like that'll be a good fit for him. But one sleeper I think is Cassius Winston.
Ooh.
Michigan State. He's played all 4 years at Michigan State, and the way he can facilitate the ball, it's like he owns the Michigan State team basically, and he gets everybody in the right spot. He's like scoring. He could work on his scoring a little bit, but a floor general was really needed for the Knicks. And the way he broke that, like last year in the tournament, he broke down that Duke team, kind of big players of Zion Williamson, R.J. Barrett, and what was his name? Cam Reddish.
Don't remind me.
I forgot. I almost. But the way he broke down that team, it's just like that was superstars basically in college, and he literally just like took them on and helped his team win. So I feel like put under the right coach. I don't know if Kenny Atkinson is the right coach. I feel somebody maybe probably like Mark Jackson. He kind of finds untapped potential, and then like with others, he said they'll be the greatest duo ever. I feel like he was going somewhere with that. So like bringing somebody like Mark Jackson or maybe Tom Thibodeau, I feel like a smart coach would like definitely like make him blossom into like a Chris Paul type player. Definitely he could be Hall of Fame.
I would love to see Cassius Winston go to the Spurs. He'd be a perfect Spurs player.
He's
a perfect Spurs player.
Like,
I don't know why you guys love Obi Toppin. He's not. I don't think Obi Toppin needs to go to the Knicks. The Knicks already have Julius Randle, Bobby Portis, Taj Gibson, and Mitchell Robinson. Your front court's set. And I know all of them are great, but there's so much depth there already. You already have 2 guys that they aren't perfect. I'm not going to sit here, and I think Obi Toppin's probably better than Taj and even Bobby Portis, but they're already there. You've already put in good money to them. I'd rather them pick a point guard, and even that, or a small forward, or taking the center. Why would they take a center? You have Mitchell Robinson and Bobby Portis behind them. I think their front court's set for the most part. The only thing they would need is a small forward, because right now their small forward is Kevin Knox, who is just he's very miss right now. He was a hit or miss prospect when he came in, and now he's just miss so far. And Mo Harkless. So I really think a point guard, I like that Cassius Winston or Trey Jones pick too. And that's a good second round pick. Too, because those guys Cassius Winston will probably go in the first round, late first round. Trey Jones can slip to the second round, which I, as a Duke fan, I hate to say out loud, but he could definitely do that. The other guy, my sleeper second round pick, if he were to go down that far, would be Cassius Stanley. I don't know where he's been slated at all.
He's like one spot under Cassius Winston, which is ironic.
And the Cassius, all the cash. I don't even know where I'm going with this, but Cassius Stanley would be a good 2-guard behind Barrett because he could just bring energy to any team. And like that'd be my 2nd-round pick. But I don't think they need Obi Toppin because Obi Toppin is a big man. You don't need Kenyon Martin you don't need Ken Martin Jr. basically on that team with all the big men they already have.
I think Obi Toppin, I think the one thing that sets him different from guys like Taj and people that are at that power forward spot on the Knicks is that even though he doesn't have great foot speed, he can shoot the ball at a better pace than a lot of power forwards that I know in the NCAA.
Julius Randle can shoot. He's not a great shooter either, But like, I don't know. I just because like there's so much. If you moved like Bobby Portis and Taj, it'd make more sense. But I like it. Just if you're gonna draft that high, I wouldn't want it on another front court player. I remember one of the things they kept talking about the Knicks is they have like 4 power forwards. So why add a 5th?
They just got from two-way, Kenny Wooten, the guy with the bounce.
Yeah, so you just don't need more power forwards and centers yet, unless you're going to make a deal and let's say they move Taj or Bobby Portis or both. Before that, though, it's not worth it, at least in my opinion.
Yeah.
Any other sleeper picks, moves, or anything that the Knicks should do on draft night?
If they lucky, let's see.
That's another thing.
If they lucky, I don't know. It could come down to this, but I'm not sure. Nico Mannion is on the board, and he could add some depth.
I don't like Nico Mannion. He did not do good in Arizona.
You don't like him?
He was not that good at Arizona. He was very, very hyped up. And if this is like a very good role player draft, like there's not going to be a lot of stars. And even as like when he was a star at Arizona, this is a school where you're supposed to blossom. He didn't. He was really inconsistent.
14 a game maybe?
Maybe, and he was inconsistent with it. That was the thing. Like if he was at least a consistent 14 and like 7, like all right. But he didn't do any. Like he came in with a lot of hype. Didn't he even reclassify? I thought he might have.
I think he might have from 2018 or some 2020 maybe.
So
I don't know. One of those classes.
He came in early to not be successful. Yeah. Like, and that's just I don't know. I thought there was he had a little too much hype coming in, and now that's kind of settled, and him going to the draft, that'd be something where I could see the Knicks doing it though for Flash, but he's not. As a point guard, I think there's way better options, even lower. I would take Cassius Winston over Nico Mannion in a heartbeat.
Yeah, because Cassius has more of a leadership role with that Michigan team, and just doing that for Tom Izzo is kind of pretty good for him.
Yeah.
Any other moves? Anything else that we could think of?
Checking the board. I don't see anybody really that can.
This is a weird draft too. It's like a lot of role players. Like
a lot of names.
Like you're not going to see a lot of these players be superstars. This is one of the first years you don't even know who the first pick's going to be. Like for real.
Yeah, it could really be anybody. Probably for the top 4, it could be anybody.
Yeah, and really this is going to be a year more than other years. I think that like who gets that first pick is going to determine those first 3-4 picks more than other years. Like even with that 2018 draft where you had Trey, Luka, Aiden, like, yeah, you knew those guys would be the top 4 picks. Isn't it be kind of like that with the top? And after that, there's just a lot of guys who are going to be bench 6 men, starters on 3rd or 4th best players. I think you're not going to have a lot of guys who are going to straight blossom in this league, but we'll do something.
And then some within the lottery, you see a lot of like role players as you go down.
Yeah.
Yeah, a lot of role players, but it's a lot of sleepers within the I don't know, past the 60th pick. There's a lot of sleepers in there.
Yeah.
One draft pick I would love to see get drafted by the Knicks is Cole Anthony.
Oh, that would be fun. That would be fun. He disappointed at North Carolina a bit, but he also got hurt. The only thing that scares me is he shoots a lot. Like, he shoots a lot. He will.
Yeah.
And you already have RJ Barrett.
Like that's why
shoot a lot.
That's why it would be fun.
You just want to see shots everywhere. They're gonna get. he'd be the most like he is the best built, I think, for New York. Like if anyone's gonna go to New York, it'd be Cole Anthony. He has the swagger. He has like the confidence. He has already the brand behind him. Plus, it's Carmelo Anthony's nephew, so like that'd be super cool. But like player wise, this is probably my Duke bias coming in here. It's just that he just shoots a lot, and if he's not hitting or he gets into a cold streak, he can shoot his team in or out of a game. I think more than other point guards in that draft.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
He's a high risk, high reward type player.
And I don't think the Knicks need that yet.
No,
they can't have that. You can't have more high risk, high reward players with a team that has basically 2 in their starting 5.
The Knicks would function if Cole Anthony were to get drafted by them.
That'd be my league pass team.
It's strange, but it's exciting to look at.
Exactly.
That would be the NBA. The Atlanta Hawks are my league pass team this year. That would become my league pass team if Cole Anthony was a starting point guard. I would watch Knicks games just to see how that would work. I think we're gonna call it here. But with that, Evans, Davion, I appreciate you guys so much coming on and being my assistant GMs and not even arguing me. You guys were super nice. I expected some arguments, so that's awesome. You'll probably do in the PlayStation party to spite me. That's okay. Plug yourself, please. You guys need to throw some plugs in for being on.
Well, y'all can follow me on Instagram at @DShootUpTheScene. I take photography pictures. Bookings are opening in 2 weeks once the corona kind of dies down. And, that's it. Evans,
plug yourself.
Y'all can follow me at Yoji24 on Instagram. That's YOHJI. I'm a producer, so if you need any beats or need me to engineer anything, I'm the guy. Just hit me up.
Any other last things that you want to say on this podcast that will just be on the podcast for good measures?
Watch the Rebuildables podcast. It's lit.
Plug
Stream the podcast at every chance you get. You might learn something.
Maybe. I don't know. I'm a bad teacher, so we'll see. Thank you guys again for popping on. It was super fun. And with that being said, thank you for everyone for tuning in and listening. This is probably my most fun episode I've had, at least since the Denver Broncos one with my other friends. But until then, hopefully I'll get these up every other week. This is going to be a pretty long episode, so this might change the schedule a bit. But until then, my name is Gerald Hopkins. I'm here with Evans and Davion. You listen to the Rebuildables podcast, not from KCOU for right now, but we'll be back before you know it. Thank you all for tuning in.
No problem.